In the shadow of towering glass, a man once untouchable sits restrained, his wrists bound in cold steel handcuffs. His eyes, filled with raw disbelief, fixate on a small child standing just feet away, innocence meeting ruin. The city's late afternoon light filters through the glass, casting long, fragile shadows around them. Above, on the cover of Time, the man's face looms large, pride shattered by scandal. A voice breaks the silence, low and haunting. He built an empire, but he couldn't save her. No names are spoken, no backstory revealed, only the jarring collision of power and loss, drawing us deep into a story of betrayal and redemption. No one knew his name here, not yet. Behind the glass and steel, the billionaire's empire lay in ruins, and his fall was more than a headline. It was a personal apocalypse. The child's eyes held questions no words could answer, and the weight of silent accusations filled the sterile room. Outside, the city pulsed indifferent, its neon heart beating on. This was not just a story of money lost or power shattered. It was a reckoning with failure that echoed in every quiet corner, every shattered dream. The city never sleeps, but here, in this frozen moment, time ground to a halt. The weight of his downfall pressed like a stone in his chest, the cold metal cuffs a stark reminder that no empire is invincible. Yet in those eyes, flickers of something stubborn remained, perhaps hope or regret, or the spark of a plan no one else could see. The child stood silently, the future uncertain, the past unforgiving. This was the fragile beginning of a story that would twist beyond all expectation. No words were exchanged, yet the silence screamed volumes. The man's empire, built on ambition and ruthlessness, now felt impossibly fragile, reduced to a man and a child locked in a moment of shared loss. Outside, the city's endless noise continued, oblivious to the private devastation contained within these walls. The paradox was unbearable. The most powerful man reduced to tears, the innocent witness to his ruin. The story had begun with shock, and it would only grow more complicated. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the room in deepening shadows, a single voice cut through the stillness, a whisper of fate, a promise of reckoning. He built an empire, but he couldn't save her. The words hung heavy in the air, an invisible thread connecting past mistakes to the uncertain future. This was no simple fall from grace. It was the opening act of a saga fueled by pain, power, and an unlikely salvation. The stage was set, the players revealed, and the world was watching. Before the skyscrapers, the lawsuits, and the headlines, the story was rooted in a small apartment where a child watched a parent's slow unraveling. The boy sat on a tattered couch, eyes wide but filled with a storm of emotions, fear, confusion, and a desperate hope that things would get better. His mother, worn from exhaustion and defeat, struggled silently in the kitchen doorway. The boy's heart ached, watching the promise of safety crumble before him. "I'll never be like you," he whispered inside, a vow forged in the silence of neglect and shattered dreams. This wound would become the foundation of everything he was yet to become, a scar that shaped his destiny. Time passed, and the boy grew into a young woman, hardened by the wounds of her past but fierce with resolve. She stood in a sleek, cold boardroom, sharp in a tailored blazer, her posture defiant amid the indifferent glances of the powerful men and women around her. Their whispers and dismissive looks tried to shrink her, but she refused to yield. Her gaze cut through the room, saying more than words could. She was here to claim her place. This wasn't just a professional fight. It was a battle for identity, for respect, for breaking the cycle of invisibility. Every rejection fueled her fire, every closed door strengthened her resolve. While she fought for power and recognition, another child sat alone in a small fluorescent-lit store, clutching a worn toy for comfort. Outside, his mother's voice trembled as she pleaded quietly with the stern store manager for a job. Any job to keep their lives from unraveling further. The boy's wide eyes reflected the harsh reality of poverty and uncertainty. The city's hum carried on, oblivious to their struggle. In the silence between them, the boy learned early that hope was fragile and often fleeting. This was a story of sacrifice and survival, written in the margins, a testament to the invisible battles fought behind closed doors. The young woman carried every scar from her fractured childhood, the shame, the love lost, the battles fought silently. In the solitude of a small office late at night, she stared out over the cityscape, the glow of rain-speckled windows illuminating her face with a mix of exhaustion and fierce resolve. The past clung to her like a shadow, but it also forged her will. The pain was real, but so was the fire it ignited. This was no longer about escaping the past. It was about wielding it, using every wound as fuel to carve out a future only she could claim. Ambition intertwined with survival, and she was ready for the fight ahead. Beneath her armor of confidence, the young woman held a flicker of vulnerability, a fragile hope that she could rewrite her story. Every night, as the city around her slept, she prepared to face battles that would demand every ounce of strength, sacrifice, and grit she had. She was no longer just the daughter of a fallen titan. She was a force unto herself. The weight of her past, the pain of rejection, and the fire of determination converged to create a woman who refused to be defined by anyone else's failures. This was the emotional anchor, the pulse of a story that would sweep across power, pain, and unexpected redemption. The journey from promise to reality began in a cramped office, cluttered with hopes scribbled on whiteboards and piles of half-empty coffee cups. The young woman worked tirelessly under harsh fluorescent lights, nights stretching endlessly into mornings. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but her spirit refused to break. Friends and family became distant memories, their calls unanswered as ambition consumed her time. Birthdays came and went unnoticed, relationships frayed or simply faded away. Each setback was a silent sacrifice, each sleepless night a step closer to a dream others called impossible. She whispered to herself in moments of doubt, "This is just the beginning," fueling the fragile light of hope that would not be extinguished. Victory tasted bittersweet. In a sleek, glass-walled conference room, she faced a panel of stoic investors, their eyes sharp with skepticism. She presented her vision with raw honesty and fierce clarity, her voice steady despite the weight of their doubt. When the meeting ended, the polite applause felt muted. Validation, yes, but hollow. Behind every handshake was the silent cost, missed birthdays, broken promises, and the aching absence of those she left behind. Success was no fairy tale. It demanded every ounce of strength, and yet the loneliness it birthed was the hardest price to pay. Still, she stood firm, driven by the fragile promise of a future she was determined to build. As the company expanded, the weight of responsibility grew heavier. The nights stretched longer, calls spilled into early mornings, and personal connections crumbled. Friends who once cheered her on disappeared into silence. Phone screens remained dark. Success became a solitary path lined with empty dinners and lonely hotel rooms. Yet the vision that drove her never wavered, even as her heart quietly ached. Each new deal signed was both a triumph and a reminder. The price of ambition was isolation. The victories felt hollow without someone to share them with, but she carried on, because surrender was not an option. Not all victories felt like wins. Boardroom battles left her bruised and exhausted, allies turning cold without warning. Every deal carried its own moral compromise, decisions that eroded her integrity bit by bit. The public saw headlines and rising profits, but never the quiet moments of doubt, the long nights spent questioning her path. The higher she climbed, the steeper the cliffs became. The success she chased was always just out of reach, a mirage that demanded ever greater sacrifices. Yet the fire inside her refused to die, driving her forward into the storm, even when the cost seemed unbearable. In the quiet hours before dawn, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The sacrifices weighed heavily. Friends lost, celebrations missed, fragments of a life left behind. Yet beneath the exhaustion, a stubborn spark burned, a fierce hope that all this pain would lead to something greater than herself. She clung to the belief that the empire she built would mean more than money. It would be a legacy of resilience and redemption. With a steadying breath, she looked out at the city awakening beneath her, knowing the hardest battles were still to come. This was more than ambition. It was survival, And she was not finished yet. Just when she thought the ground beneath her feet was steady, the earth shifted violently. The truth came crashing down like a tempest. This empire she had poured her soul into was never fully hers. Behind closed doors, deals were made without her knowledge, ownership tangled in secrets. Worse still, her trusted co-founder, the sibling she once confided in, had been weaving a web of betrayal. The foundation cracked, revealing fractures in loyalty, ambition, and love. She felt the floor drop beneath her as the weight of deception settled in her chest. This wasn't just a business crisis. It was a personal apocalypse that threatened to consume everything she had fought for. The revelation unraveled her carefully constructed world. Whispers of betrayal echoed in empty hallways. The boardroom became a battlefield of suspicion and blame. The sibling she once trusted was exposed as a co-conspirator in schemes that threatened to drain the company's lifeblood. Anguish and fury intertwined as she confronted the bitter reality. Those she loved were also the ones who could destroy her. Every alliance she counted on felt tenuous, every handshake now shadowed by doubt. The company's future was no longer a question of strategy, but survival, and the cost was more than she was prepared to pay. Amid the chaos, a darker truth emerged. A mentor she had revered was not the guiding light she believed. Instead, he had siphoned resources and manipulated decisions for his own gain, exploiting her trust and ambition. The company's financial health was bleeding, and the walls closed in faster than she could react. The betrayal cut deeper than any boardroom battle. This was a personal wound disguised as corporate sabotage. She realized that the empire's foundations were riddled with rot, threatening to crumble beneath the weight of lies. Collapse wasn't just imminent, it was inevitable. In the midst of crumbling trust and betrayal, a devastating personal secret surfaced. She was fighting a silent battle against an illness she could not share with anyone. The weight of leadership pressed down harder as physical weakness crept in, unseen by her team. She masked fatigue with steely resolve, hiding pain behind every calculated move. The duality of her struggle, a collapsing empire and a failing body, created a pressure cooker of fear and determination. The stakes had never been higher, and the path forward more uncertain. The question was no longer how she would win, but whether she could survive at all. With the empire unraveling and her own strength waning, she faced a crossroads that threatened to shatter everything. The betrayal was not just a rupture in business, but a fracture in her very identity. Every plan she had made now felt like a fragile illusion. Yet in this darkest hour, a spark of resilience flared. She knew the coming storm would test not only her will, but her soul. The collapse had stripped away illusions, but it also revealed a deeper truth. What she had lost might be nothing compared to what she still had the power to save. The story was far from over. The boardroom felt electric, charged with tension so thick it seemed to press against the walls. Every seat was filled with faces, some etched with skepticism, others tinged with hope, all waiting for the woman who had fought relentlessly to take the floor. Her voice, calm but resolute, sliced through the heavy silence. This company isn't just a ledger or a brand. It's the sum of countless dreams, sacrifices, and hard work, she said, eyes sweeping the room with quiet fire. We have a choice, to let it crumble or to rebuild, stronger and wiser. The weight of history, betrayal, and hope converged in this one moment. She knew this vote wasn't just about numbers. It was about reclaiming her story, her legacy, and the future of everyone who believed in the company. Murmurs filled the room as the vote approached, a ripple of anxiety sweeping through the board members like an unseen current. She scanned each face, searching for signs of loyalty amid the sea of doubt. Memories of sacrifice, missed birthdays, broken friendships, countless sleepless nights, flooded her mind, but her voice remained steady. We cannot afford division now. The company's survival depends on unity, trust, and belief, she implored. This is our moment to rise above the fractures, to prove that resilience can forge a new path. The air was thick with unspoken fears and fragile hopes. Every heart in that room knew this decision would echo far beyond the boardroom walls, shaping the company's fate for years to come. The final votes were cast with solemn gravity. Silence engulfed the room like a heavy fog. Time seemed suspended as the chairperson tallied the results. Faces froze in anticipation, hope and dread mingling in equal measure. When the verdict finally came, it was a razor-thin margin in her favor. Relief and disbelief flickered across her features. The company had been saved, but barely. The victory was bittersweet, haunted by the sacrifices and fractures that had paved the way. As murmurs of cautious celebration stirred, she allowed herself a fleeting smile, a quiet acknowledgement that the hardest battles had been won, but the war was far from over. In the quiet aftermath, an unexpected moment of fragile reconciliation unfolded. The woman and her estranged sibling, once bitter adversaries, shared a silent embrace in the dimly lit office. Their eyes, heavy with unspoken apologies and the pain of betrayal, spoke more than words ever could. Around them, the company breathed a tentative sigh of relief. The storm had not passed, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope for healing. This embrace was a promise, a forgiveness, of new beginnings, and the possibility that even fractured families and battered legacies could find peace. The stakes were immense, but so was the chance to rebuild from the ruins. Standing alone in the stillness that followed, she gazed out over the glittering cityscape, each light a reminder of the lives touched by her choices and sacrifices. The legacy she fought to protect was more than an empire of wealth or influence. It was a testament to resilience, courage, and the power to forgive. Her heart was heavy with the costs, but resolute in her vision. "This is only the beginning," she whispered to herself, a quiet vow to rebuild stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The journey ahead remained uncertain, but the moment everything changed had passed. Now, the story she would write was one of redemption, strength, and hope. The dust of battles fought and won finally settled, revealing a landscape forever changed. The company, once battered and bruised, now stirred with a fragile new life. She sat quietly in a modest, sunlit office, far from the grand boardrooms and blinding spotlights, her hands folded on the worn surface of her desk. Around her, personal mementos stood testament to the journey. Letters from employees whose lives had been touched, photographs capturing moments of resilience and triumph, and small keepsakes from loved ones. Her face, touched by soft morning light, reflected the quiet wisdom forged from sacrifice. No longer driven by ambition's relentless hunger, she embraced stewardship, recognizing that true power lay in nurturing and sustaining what others had built. This was not an end, but a beginning, a new chapter of care, humility, and enduring legacy. The transformation extended beyond the walls of the company. Titles, accolades, and the cold calculus of power no longer defined her. Instead, she sought healing in the fragile reconnections she once feared, lost forever. She reached out to friends who had drifted away amid the storms, and to family whose bonds had frayed under pressure. In these reunions, she found something deeper than success: shared humanity, forgiveness, and renewed hope. The empire she now helped guide was no longer a fortress of solitude, but a community woven together by trust and compassion. Her scars, once sources of pain and shame, became badges of courage and reminders that resilience flourished not in perfection, but in vulnerability and grace. Though the company's foundation had been steadied, the woman's own body remained a fragile secret she bore alone. The illness, quiet and relentless, required a new kind of strength, one not measured in boardroom victories, but in moments of vulnerability and self-compassion. She learned to balance her demanding leadership role with the necessity of rest and healing, finding peace in small rituals. A morning cup of tea, quiet meditation, the embrace of nature's calm. Acceptance transformed her, not as a surrender, but as a profound reclamation of power through vulnerability. Her legacy was no longer about invincibility, but about resilience, the fierce courage to rise again despite fragility. The daughter who once vowed to escape her past had instead rewritten her entire story. Power no longer meant control or conquest, but legacy, what she would leave behind for the next generation. She stepped away from daily battles, trusting others to carry forward the vision while she nurtured her own growth and peace. In sun-dappled gardens and quiet parks, she found solace and strength, walking slowly along paths lined with trees and light. The urban chaos she once ruled now felt distant, replaced by the gentle rhythm of nature and renewal. The past no longer chained her. It became the foundation upon which she built a life rich with meaning, grace, and forgiveness. In the quiet dusk atop a rooftop overlooking the city she had fought so fiercely to save, she breathed deeply, her silhouette framed by the fading glow of sunset. The countless lights below flickered like distant stars, each one a life touched by her choices, sacrifices, and unwavering love. Though her heart carried the weight of losses endured, it also held a fierce hope for what lay ahead. She was no longer the titan chasing empires, but a woman reborn, rooted in resilience, courage, and profound grace. The legacy she left behind was not measured in wealth or titles, but in the strength to endure, forgive, and rise anew. The city shimmered before her, silent witness to a story transformed. The boardroom, once a battlefield of heated words and fierce decisions, now lay still and empty except for one solitary figure standing at its heart. She stood motionless, eyes fixed on the empty leather chair, a symbol of authority, loss, and the many sacrifices made along the way. Her reflection in the polished glass walls was faint but unmistakable. A woman transformed by trials, shaped not just by power but by the wounds and wisdom carved into her soul. "He left the company," she whispered, her voice thick with reverence and memory. "But he never left her." Those words hung in the silence, an echo of love and legacy that bridged the chasm between past mistakes and future hope. The empire was hers now, not to dominate, but to protect and nurture, with a heart both fierce and forgiving. She moved through a quiet corridor, her footsteps soft against polished marble floors. Pausing before a towering mirror framed in ornate wood, she studied her own reflection. Behind her, through the hallway's broad windows, the city twinkled. A vast constellation of lives and stories unfolding beneath a sky, set ablaze by fireworks. Her eyes, deep and shimmering with unshed tears, held the weight of every loss and triumph etched upon her heart. The silence stretched between the fractures of past pain and the fragile bloom of new hope. As the fireworks painted the night sky in brilliant hues, she whispered a vow to herself, to carry forward the legacy of resilience, courage, and grace into whatever dawn awaited. The soft sound of small footsteps echoed down the hallway. A child appeared at the entrance of the boardroom, hesitant but curious, eyes wide with wonder at the vast space and the imposing chair awaiting a new occupant. Kneeling beside the child, she offered a gentle smile, a gesture woven from years of struggle, hope, and love. "This is your world now," she said softly, voice full of promise and warmth. The torch was passing, the story renewing itself through the next generation, one that would inherit the lessons of resilience, courage, and compassion. Though the past was heavy, the future sparkled with possibility, alive with the promise of new dreams yet to be written. Watching from just behind, she saw the child's small hand brush the rich leather armrest, a tactile connection to power redefined. Behind them, the city throbbed with life, countless stories unfolding beneath neon signs and starry skies. The future was no longer hers to carry alone. It belonged to the dreamers, the fighters, and the lovers yet to come. The cycle of ambition, pain, and redemption would continue, but now, with a new heartbeat, a fresh hope, and a deeper understanding. As darkness deepened outside, an unshakable peace settled inside her. The legacy she had fought to preserve was no longer fragile. It was alive, ready to grow stronger with every passing day. The final scene held still in time, a silent vow passing between generations in a glance filled with unspoken promise. Outside, the night sky burst into a symphony of fireworks, painting the darkness with brilliant cascades of light and color. The city seemed to hold its breath, wrapped in the magic of new beginnings and enduring hope. "He left the company," the voice whispered one last time, "but never left her." The screen faded slowly to black, leaving viewers suspended between silence and tears, awash with the truth that endings are but doorways to fresh starts. The legacy was more than a story told, it was a promise lived, forever echoing in hearts and histories to come.